On a freezing night, when the wind cut the skin like blades and the snow fell mercilessly, 20 men on the verge of collapse knocked on the door of a lonely house. They were outsiders, wrapped in leather and steel, known for their hardness and their feared reputation. What they could not imagine was that an elderly widow would change the course of their lives with a single act of kindness. And what happened the next morning would shake an entire town. The camera slowly moves through the snow toward a solitary house, battered by the wind. The peeling paint reveals years of abandonment, and the smoke that weakly rises from the chimney looks like a final sigh resisting the winter. Inside, darkness prevails. A dim yellow lamp flickers above a worn wooden table, and there she is, an elderly woman, hunched back, and a face lined with wrinkles that are scars of time. Her eyes, sunken yet bright, hold secrets of decades of pain, loss, and endless nights of silence. Widowed for more than 20 years, she had grown accustomed to speaking with the faded photographs resting on the mantel. In one, a young man smiles from a distant past. In another, she herself, dressed in white, holding a bouquet in her hands with hope still intact. Beneath the window, a pair of old dusty boots remain like a silent altar to a love she never forgot. The winter cold was relentless. Outside, trees cracked under the weight of the snow. Inside, the stove's fire barely kept the home alive. And yet, in the midst of scarcity and loneliness, she held on to a sacred ritual, baking bread with her tired hands, preparing soup with the little she had, and opening her door to anyone who might need it. She possessed no riches, no family, no comforts. Her treasure was invisible, a heart that kept beating with strength, capable of offering warmth in the ice and kindness in a world where most only offered indifference. The storm roared like a hungry beast, when suddenly a different sound tore through the night. It wasn't the wind, it was engines. The metallic echo rumbled in the valley like a thunder drawing closer. Tires bit into the snow, leaving black scars across the white frost. 20 motorcycles stopped in front of the solitary house, their headlights cutting into the facade like knives of light in the darkness. From the machines descended hulking men, clad in weather-beaten leather, tattoos telling stories of violence and survival, and jackets with a symbol that froze the blood of anyone who saw it: Hell's Angels. Their presence alone commanded respect, fear, and silence. They were used to life on the margins, where people closed doors, pulled curtains, and avoided eye contact. There, beneath that merciless snowfall, they braced themselves to hear the same words as always: "We don't want you here." Time seemed to freeze when the house's door creaked open. In the doorway appeared the old woman. She did not step back at the intimidating sight of 20 giants clad in leather and steel. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from the cold. With a broken voice, she spoke only 3 words no one expected:
"Come in. It's cold." The men looked at each other, disbelieving, as if they hadn't heard correctly. A door that didn't close, but opened to them. One by one, they entered that humble home. The contrast was brutal. Tattooed, hardened colossi sitting around a worn wooden table under the faint glow of a lamp, while the old woman set steaming bowls of soup in front of them. On their shoulders, heavy leather jackets. On the table, blankets woven by wrinkled hands that had endured more winters than any of them. That night, in that small, warm kitchen, something impossible to explain in words happened. For the first time in a long time, those men, hardened by the road and by life itself, felt accepted. Not as outlaws, not as monsters, but as human beings.
The kindness of an old woman, an act as simple as opening a door in the middle of winter, did not remain trapped within those four walls. The news spread like wildfire, traveling from mouth to mouth, from wheel to wheel, until it reached the ears of the entire Brotherhood. That dawn, the valley awoke to a sound that seemed pulled from a nightmare, or from legend. At first, it was a low murmur in the distance, like thunder far away. Then a metallic roar multiplied, growing with every second, until the ground itself shook beneath their feet. When the first light of dawn broke the darkness, the fields were still covered in a white shroud of snow. But that frozen silence was shattered by 1,000 engines. 1,000 motorcycles advanced like an army of steel and fire, aligned with precision, their exhaust vapor rising in columns that looked like flames against the winter sky. The entire town came out of their homes, first with fear, then with disbelief. They had never seen anything like it. This wasn't a visit, it was a declaration. And all those men, tattooed, patched, carrying the main Hell's Angels emblazoned on their backs, didn't arrive with violence, but with a different purpose: gratitude. One by one, they unloaded supplies, sacks of firewood, blankets, boxes of medicine. They placed money on a humble table as tribute to the woman who had offered them bread and shelter when no one else would. Others repaired the cracks in the house, reinforced the roof, fixed the windows. That forgotten hut began to transform under the hands of those road-worn colossi. And the townsfolk, who for years had seen that widow as an invisible shadow, now watched in awe. The woman they had ignored had become the center of loyalty for a brotherhood feared across the world. That dawn, the roar of 1,000 Hell's Angels was not a cry of war, nor a symbol of fear. It was a hymn, a song of steel and gasoline to gratitude, to brotherhood, and to loyalty that transcends bloodlines. That morning, a forgotten widow was not only protected,
She was crowned queen in the hearts of the most feared men on the asphalt.
We live in a world that often judges by what is seen on the surface. A hardened face, a leather jacket, a tattoo etched into skin. Too often those appearances dictate fear, rejection, and silence. But that fragile, solitary woman taught us a truth many had forgotten. Kindness is not measured in muscles, or in insignias, or in the roar of an engine, but in the ability to offer something when you have almost nothing. The most feared men of the roads, those whose name is whispered with caution, responded to the warmth of a human gesture with loyalty that knows no borders. She gave them bread and shelter. They gave her eternal respect. Because true brotherhood is not born of fear, nor of violence, but of respect, of gratitude, and the certainty that even in the hardest hearts, a spark of kindness can ignite a fire impossible to extinguish. She opened her door to 20 frozen men and awoke surrounded by 1,000 angels of steel. Because even in the hardest hearts, kindness leaves a mark impossible to erase.